So in the last video, we went ahead and implemented our test program and got that up and going. Now, what I wanted to do was just show you another way of these two particular methods, the modify item and the remove item. Because at the moment, you can see they're actually passing the position number that we want to edit. And good programming practice would dictate that we not require the client, in other words, the program that's using the class, the grocery list class, to have to do that, to actually know what the array element is or anything of that nature. We should really be creating a class, in this case the grocery list class, that's self-contained and leave it to handle, I should say, the actual element numbers. And from the point of view of the calling process, it should work much as the case in the add item. We just pass the item we want to add, we leave the rest to the grocery list class. And likewise for the search item, you notice we just basically sent it the name of the item we want to search for, and it did the hard work for us. So what we're going to do now is change the modify item and the remove item so that we just pass the item that we want to either edit or remove. And the grocery list class will do the rest. So what that's going to require is we go back to the grocery list class. We need to create a method because you can see that ultimately to update the grocery list array list, we need to pass the position. So we need some way to find out what a position for a particular string is, where it is in the array list, so we've got that number that we can actually use. And to do that's pretty simple. So I'm going to create a method. I'm going to call it modify list as well, modify grocery item. This time it's going to have just one parameter because of course we're already using the one below us. You can see on the screen there that's got the two parameters, the position and the item. So what we're going to do is we're going to find the number and then pass the number and the string to the modify grocery item method, which is going to do the set there. So we're not going to duplicate code by having the grocery list.set in both methods. So consequently, what we need to do is find a method or create a method that returns us that integer, that position. Now we have got a method that already exists to help us out, the find item, but currently that's returning a string. And that's really not really what we want. So what we're going to do is I'm going to actually change this and I'm going to get that to return an integer, like so. And we're going to change the code, we're going to get rid of the exists, and we're going to make this a lot simpler. All we need to do here is have one line of code, and the code is going to be return grocery list.index search item. And get rid of all that other code. And that's going to return an integer, and if it does exist, it's going to return a number that's 0 or greater, in other words 0 or higher, and if it doesn't exist, it's going to return a number that's less than 0. So what we can do in our modify grocery item, we can put int position equals find item, new item. So is that item, does that exist? And then we can put if position is greater than or equal to 0, then we're going to call modify grocery item, pass position, and pass the new item as well. And that's literally it. That's all we need to do for the modify item. So we've created an overloaded method. It's looking for it's trying to find the item. It's returning the number based on here, returning an index of that string. In this case, the grocery item, whether it exists or not. If it's greater than or equal to 0, position that's returned from find item, it means that it does exist in the array list. We then pass that position number and the item to our modify grocery item method with the overloaded parameters, and it'll do the set and it'll actually say that's been modified. So that's modify grocery, which is good. We want to do a similar thing to to remove grocery item. Now, remove grocery item is a little bit different in that it's only got the one parameter, but it's pretty well the same concept. So we can do public void remove grocery item, and we'll put string item, and we're just going to copy that code, same code. And of course, that's just going to be item in this case. If it's greater than 0, what we're going to do is we're going to call remove grocery item and just pass the position, like so. So again, remove grocery item, it accepts the parameter this time of the item number. So again, we're not having to deal with these internal numbers, and it then determines whether it's on file, and if it is, and only if it is, in other words, if it's greater, the position returned is greater than or equal to 0, which means it's in the array list, then we actually return. So the other thing to do here at this point is with the modify grocery item, we don't want to have that available as a public method anymore. That is now an internal method that we don't want accessible to anything but the internal workings of the grocery list class. So that would be a candidate to make as a private method. And by doing that, it means that we're forcing the people who are using our class to use only the methods that we want them to use. So that would be valid for that. And likewise for this internal remove method, because it's dealing with positions, we want to do the same thing. So from now on, they need to use the modify grocery item, passing the parameter of the name of the item they want to modify or have removed, and the rest happens as you can see there on the screen. And we can actually delete that line there with the remove grocery item because we don't need that. Literally, we're just going to pass that because we've already tested when we're calling this method. We're testing to make sure that there is actually an entry there, and then we're actually removing it. So that's the code there. But what we now need to do is go back to our main method. We're going to find we've got some errors. And we need to fix those up. So instead of asking for an item number, what we actually now need to do is actually ask for what the old or what the current grocery item is that we want to modify. So instead of an integer, we're going to make that the item number to be a string. So we're going to put next line, like so. Remove that next one. And so we've got the old item number and the new item number. So we need to then change the method, what we're calling. And actually what I did was I made a slight mistake there. What we do need to do is, we don't pass the position number anymore, but we need to pass the old item there. So what we need to do is put item number there, because we need to pass the item number, the old item number, and the new item. So we actually need a method that covers both. But item number in this case is now the actual text instead of the integer. So I actually neglected to do that last time. So what we need to do is go back into grocery list, and just to change our item here, well, it should be actually string. We'll call it current item, new item. So what we should be doing here is putting a test here to say, checking to see whether the current item exists. And if the current item exists, then we want to pass the position number and what the new item is to save that. So we're checking to see whether the current item is on file, and then if it is, then we're passing the new item. So in the case of remove grocery item, we only need to pass the old item because we've got a new parameter. We're not actually trying to update it to anything. We're just trying to remove it. So that should still work so long as we're passing the current item. So if I go back to my code, the modify grocery item should now work because the item number is being passed, which is now a string. The item name, let's put that current item name and enter new item. And for remove, enter item name. And this should be next line. And of course, it'll be a string. And there's no minus ones or anything like that anymore because that's all happening automatically. And the other thing was the search, the find item is now no longer working because that was returning a string. So what we need to do to here is, instead of calling the find method, we need to create another method, because that find method should now really be an internal method only, because we don't want to expose that necessarily, because we don't want to expose the integer to the calling process. So we want to remove that to make that a private, because it's only used in the class. But with that said, we do need to create another method to enable someone to actually pass in the name of a grocery item and to return that item, or to check, I should say, whether that item's on file. So to do that, we're going to create a public method, public boolean, and we'll put on file string search item. And we're going to put int position equals find item search item. Well, then we're going to put a test here to put if position is greater than or equal to 0, return true. So that's if we do find a record, return true, otherwise return false. So that's just changed a little bit from what it was. We know, again, we're getting the search item that we want to search for, checking to see whether it's there. If it is there, the position is greater than or equal to 0, we're going to return a true to say, yes, it does exist on file, or it's in the array list. Otherwise, we're going to return false. So we go back to our main item here now, and we'll change this to put on file. Instead of putting not null, we can remove that now. And that should now work. So we've now got searching for the item to search for, checking to see whether it's on file, and if grocery list not on file, in other words, that's checking to see whether that's true, we're going to say that it's found, otherwise we're going to put not on file. So you can see now that by removing the need to actually add the index and so forth, and having to pass a number, we're leaving all the complexities of the internal handling in the grocery list class. And that's where it should be, because from the point of view, if you're accessing this grocery list class, you shouldn't need to know or want to know how it's been implemented, how internally these items are being saved. All we want to do is just pass on the item number in the case of remove. So we want to remove, and it'll get removed. Likewise, in the case of to modify an item, we need to pass the item number we want to modify, and then pass the contents of the new item, what we want it to be replaced to, so on and so forth. So let's just run that now and make sure that it does work. So firstly, we'll just add an item, add a couple of items, and print them out. That's 3, that's good. So we'll try the modify now. We want to modify an existing item, enter the current item name. So the item name that we want to modify, we're going to put, let's just try milk. Enter the new items, in other words, what do we want milk to become? So we'll call that cereal again. Grocery item 2 has been modified. We didn't change the message, but we probably would have wanted to have done that. And let's just check whether that's been updated. Print the list again. You can see cereal has now replaced milk, so that's good. That's now working. And let's go and try remove. We'll try remove bread again. Now notice there's no number. This time we need to type it in. So if we type in bread, we didn't have a message to indicate whether it was successful or not. But if we have a look at the results by printing them, we can see that's been removed. And just to check now, if we actually put in something that isn't there, so we put remove, nothing's happened, but it hasn't crashed as well. So we just go back and print the list. That's good, that's still working. And look at our menu options again. So that modify and remove is still working, and we should still be able to search now. Item to search for, we put eggs, found eggs, so that's working. And we'll try it again, something that wasn't there, bread, because we've now removed bread. Bread not on file. So that's the way that I recommend that to use an array list. You should make sure that you're not putting the functionality in the wrong place. So normally the functionality should be in the class that has got the, where the array list is being added, where the entries are being added to the array list, I should say. And by putting it all in this method, in this class, it's all self-contained, and we're not releasing any extra functionality out in the wild, so to speak. So we're not letting other programmers or other parts of the program get access to the internal workings of the grocery list. So, and we've talked about encapsulation, obviously, in the object-oriented programming parts of the course, but this is a practical example of why you wouldn't want to do that and why you want to keep that all self-contained, because you can change out then the implementation. In terms of the array list, you might decide to change this back to just a regular array that we've talked about earlier, and you could actually do that. You could change this whole thing out to a normal array, and it wouldn't change anything from the point of view of the people who are calling or accessing this class. It would still work. Okay, so a couple of other things I want to do. I want to just show you a couple of other ways to access arrays. And to do one of those things, we need to add a getter here in our grocery list. So I'm going to add a getter because we'll need the array, and I'll explain why shortly. So we're just going to add the ability to retrieve that array list from there. So what I'm going to do is actually add an additional, well, actually down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back up to here, and just at the start of the class, I'm going to make that option 7, and I'm going to add another option. And if we do go into option 6, we're just going to execute a bit of code that we're going to create. And we're going to call that process array list. And we need to create that method. Process array list. And what I want to do is just show you some other ways that you can copy one array list to another array list, because there could be situations, as we've shown in previous array code, where you want to do that. So firstly, we can create a new array list. One way that we can actually do that is we can actually put, we'll just create a new array like so. But then we can actually put new array dot add, actually add all, and it'll be grocery list dot get the array list. So what that command does, that takes the contents that are in grocery list, the dot get grocery list, which if you recall is just returning our array list, our grocery list array list, and that's why I added the getter there to do so. That's one way of adding the entire contents to the new array. So it's just a quick way to copy, instead of having to go create a for loop and go through each record, determine the entry, and then actually save it. That one line of code will actually save the entire array. So it's a really good way of copying an array. So that's one method. There's also another quicker way of doing it, and to do that we'll do another array, and that could be array list string. We'll call that one next array equals new array list. And if you know that the array list that you want to copy, at the point that you're creating the new array list, you can actually just put in grocery list dot get grocery list, and that will actually create a brand new array list that's initialized to the contents of this array list. That's pretty much identical to what that previous line did, but it's happening at the point of time that you're declaring and initializing the new object for a new array list object. So that's another handy way of copying things. And these are the types of things that you want to do wherever possible. You want to try and find the Java shortcuts to your code so you're not having to do this sort of stuff and creating all this extra code that's unneeded. And lastly, there's one other way of doing it. If for some reason you wanted to take the contents of the array list and convert that back to a regular array, there is a way of doing that as well. It's actually two statements to do that. The first one will create the array, so it'll be string. We'll call this one my array. Then you put create the new string array, but you start off, you put grocery list dot get grocery list dot size. So we're initializing it to the correct size first, and then you can actually type in my array equals, and it'll be grocery list dot get grocery list dot to array. And notice the to array, it's actually got the parameters it's expecting, or it's going to be returning, is an object in array format. And an object will be the object that we're working on. And because we're using the to array on the get grocery list, effectively that's going to return an array list of strings, which matches our declaration on the previous line. So we could put. So what that basically does, we have a look at our code. You can see that's returning an array list of strings in this case because it knows it's the get grocery list, converting it to an array, and that's returning an array of whatever the elements are. And we need to put in the actual name of the variable that we want this to be updated to. And by passing that to the toArray method, that variable, that's going to be updated. So our my array will actually contain the contents of our array. So that's the process ArrayList method. What I was going to do was do some printouts just to confirm that these were actually working, but we're getting a bit late in this video. It's getting long again. So I want to move on to the next video, which is actually the challenge. So I'm going to leave that there now, but the main thing I just wanted to show you was just an alternate way, if you're wanting to copy array lists, just to get you starting to think about how to go about looking at documentation and different ways to access things with code that's built into Java already. So that's it. That's the ArrayList functionality done and dusted now. And in the next video, we'll finally get to the challenge where I'm going to go through and get you to consolidate this and put this all together and issue with a nice meaty challenge to further help you with your understanding of ArrayList. So I'll see you in that next video.